I'll have you introduce yourself with your name, what you do for a day job, and how you've ended up in the news this week. Go ahead.
All right, so my name is Michael Baca. Right now I'm a graduate student at Northern Arizona University, Master's of Education, Human Relations. Sorry, what was the last question?
How you ended up in the news.
Oh, how I ended up in the news. So there's a political article that came out, and we're just trying to get the message out about being the Hamilton electors, saying that there's a chance that we can, by coming together, we can avoid a Donald Trump presidency, but it's going to take a unification of Americans, I believe.
How did you end up as an elector?
I happened to just sign the paperwork, and they asked me to run, so I ran and had the support of the county convention. And then I ran to be an at-large state delegate for the national convention, and I won that, so I was a Bernie delegate there. And no one saw the results on Tuesday happening the way they did. And so since then I've been working with a couple of other electors, and right now I have at least half a dozen Democratic electors who are willing to support a Republican candidate under this We the People movement.
So what would be the end game of this? Walk me through it.
The absolute ideal end game is that we get enough Democratic support and at least 37 Republican electors to come together around a We the People Republican candidate, a Republican president, that we can avoid the House altogether. Now, that's again, it's all down the line. At very least, I would hope that it gets sent to the House, where they'll most likely choose Trump anyway. But it sends a message to the Republicans, and it sends a message to politicians that, hey, people are willing to come together. And if at very least it just starts to raise a discussion on Electoral College reform, I think that is great as well.
With all due respect, it kind of seems like you stumbled backwards into being an elector.
Yeah, I absolutely did.
Okay.
I didn't know what I was. I just signed up the paperwork, and I was asked to run, and that's exactly why I signed up the paperwork, in case no one else would do it. And I happened to be put in this position, but I think that Donald Trump doesn't have the requisite qualifiers, as Alexander Hamilton would say in the Federalist Papers, to become the president. And I think that we're in a unique moment in history. I think this whole election cycle has been unique, that if there's a year that this gets done, I think this could be the year.
When Hillary Clinton defeated your preferred candidate, Bernie Sanders,
yes,
you pledged to faithfully elect her.
Well, there's no pledge in Colorado, but yes, I came around to it because the WikiLeaks were very upsetful, and in all honesty, and I don't want to be dishonest, I came out with a TYT reporter saying that unless she would come out against the Dakota Access Pipeline, I was going to abstain my vote. But I thought there was no way it was going to have any influence. Well, we see Donald Trump now won, and so if I was willing to stand up to a Democrat, which I am a Democrat, well, what am I going to do to try to help at least get a more moderate Republican who is not a climate denialist, which I think is a very big problem, because 7.4 billion people are going to be affected by the outcome on December 19th.
But when Hillary beat Sanders, you told Hillary voters that you would faithfully cast your vote for her if Colorado went for her.
And absolutely. And I think that if this movement doesn't take off, well then yeah, there's no need to, why I'm not going to vote for a Republican if there's no chance. I'm saying if we can get a unification of people, a unification of Democrats and Republicans around a candidate, well then we can at least still accomplish the mission to vote, to get away from Donald Trump. We told them at the convention that, she's a candidate that could lose to Donald Trump. We didn't think that would actually happen. Well, it did. And so now we need Democrats. We need to unite more than ever to defeat Donald Trump and have a more sensible, moderate Republican in office.
Is this how the system is supposed to work?
Absolutely. This is just another step in the process. Typically in most elections, this doesn't happen. They go traditionally, and they vote. The states vote how they pledge votes on the electors. But just because that's tradition, we're trying to break through that.
Faithless electors have never changed the outcome of a
no,
presidential election.
we're not faithless electors. I don't really like that term. We're the Hamilton electors. We're trying to utilize, the Federalist Papers, utilize what Alexander Hamilton wrote about to do our deliberation over these next 34 days and come to a consensus candidate that the American people can get behind, because I don't think the American people were behind either candidate.
So your belief is that the Electoral College's job is to deliberate and make an independent decision of the voters?
Not an independent. We should look at what the voters did. And we also should see the 45% of voters who did not want to vote at all. In Michigan, there was 100,000 voters who chose to leave. They voted down the ballot, but left the presidential ballot blank. And that tells me they didn't want to vote for either candidate. And so yes, Republicans won. We're not trying to undermine that by any means, but we are trying to bring that together and like, hey, let's get a different Republican that the American people can get behind so we can unify. And then as Democrats, this helps our cause because we'll be able to unify much more quickly because right now there's a power vacuum. And go ahead, sir.
I know that you want to make a point about the Electoral College and about the outcome of this year's election. Is it possible that what you end up doing in the end is ensuring that 4 years from now they make sure that there aren't people like Michael Baca who are in the Electoral College who can screw with the result?
I would love it. I would love that 538 people do not have the power to do this. But the 12th Amendment, there's nothing about the popular vote. So if we can get behind a popular vote, that is probably something I would want to look into. But I think that's something I could get behind because I don't feel that Michael Baca, just a guy who's a graduate student, should have this power. Trust me, I understand. But because this is an option and the people I've spoken to said this is within the full legal, technical, and moral authority under the Constitution, that this is an option. And if we're, in order to beat Donald Trump and Steve Bannon, we can't normalize that kind of behavior in our government. And I think that, by we the people, by gathering together, by uniting, this brings America much closer together, even though I'm not happy, that Republicans won. But you know what? I'm excited to see what they have to say and what their policies lead to.
With all due respect, I can't tell myself whether this is brilliant or disgraceful.
Me too. I'm definitely, I'm in that boat, but right now, I'm a former United States Marine, and the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, I don't believe Donald Trump has that. And if he can lead Marines anywhere in the world for up to 90 days without congressional approval, that is something that I take a great deal of offense to. And I think a more sensible, moderate Republican that can do that is probably the option I would go for.
You don't feel like you violated your word to voters when you said that you would faithfully elect her to now do something else?
No, absolutely. I did violate my word, and the votes have not been casted yet. So we have 34 days, and we'll see how the election turns out. But I don't think that the majority of the American public would mind if we avoid a Donald Trump presidency.
Michael Baca, thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you, sir.